What's going on, guys, and welcome back to Injection of Inspiration, where every single Saturday I, Graham G.S. Matthews, inject you with your daily dose of motivational advice, helpful tips, all that other great positive shit. I thought today would be a fitting time to talk about a story that happened almost exactly 4 years ago, my freshman year of college. Literally had not been there for more than 2 or 3 weeks, and this happened. And it ties in today's topic that discusses why you should, A, never be ashamed of who you are. I've talked about it before, embrace who you are and whatnot. But you gotta learn to laugh at yourself. There are obviously, undoubtedly, inevitably going to be times where you will feel embarrassed or ashamed or whatever, which is, purely natural. That's just the nature of being a human being. But you gotta learn to laugh at yourself, learn from those mistakes, if they even are mistakes, and move on. People forget about it in 5 seconds anyway. Why don't you? Okay, so here's my story of a time that I felt embarrassed. And in recent years, everyone gets embarrassed. I'm sure I have as well. No one instance comes to mind. But like any time I've ever felt embarrassed, I just think to myself, at first I feel embarrassed, but then I think to myself, this is so inconsequential. Who the fuck possibly could care? So I'm not going to care either. So why give a shit? You know what I'm saying? That's happened like when you have your fly down or something. That's happened to me before, like a few years ago when I was in college. I'm like, wow, fuck, that was embarrassing, but oh well, I kind of laughed it off and moved on. And those people who, there are going to be those that don't let it go and give you a hard time about it. That's never happened to me per se, but those are the people that are either joking about it or you just need to learn to laugh at yourself. And at that point, people will feel like, oh, I'm not embarrassing this person by bringing up that specific instance or moment, so I'm not going to keep doing it, because if they're not embarrassed by it, which is my objective, then I'll just let it go. But anyway, again, that's never happened to me per se, but I've seen instances where that's happened to people before, so I figured I would mention it. But my story dates back 4 years ago at this point, in September of 2013. Now, I might have said this story before here on the show. I've done so many episodes of Injection of Inspiration in the past almost a year now that it would not shock me if I told this story before. So if you've heard it before, and I've said the story before, I've shared it on like my Facebook page, on my wrestling Facebook page, which kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but I did when it happened 4 years ago, and I think I shared like an update, or I reshared it about a year later. But beyond that, I haven't really told this story many times. It's not anything huge, but I thought it was a small anecdote that it was worth telling and ties in today's topic. But anyway, so this goes back about 4 years ago. I had just started college, and literally first day of classes and whatnot, I spot this really cute girl. I'm like, oh, she's cute, whatever. I don't really put any more thought into it. But I later come to find out she's in all of my classes, which was no coincidence, because I was one of those kids that could not schedule my classes. I had all 8 a.m.s every single day of the week. And so I had like the default schedule, because I couldn't log into the system and schedule them myself. So the administration did it for me. I'm sure this girl had the same thing happen to her. I'm positive she could not have possibly chosen all the same classes that I did. That's almost impossible, because that happened with no one else except for me and her. And she was in literally every single one of my classes, all 5 or 6 classes I had that semester. And I also later found out she was an aspiring journalism major as well, and also, for the first week or two, was on the school newspaper, which I was on too. So then, as more time passed and whatnot, again, like I said, she was really cute. I was like trying to build up confidence to go talk to her and whatnot. And then before I was able to do so, and I was planning on it, which you should never do, by the way, because life never goes according to plan. But I was like, this day at this time, I'll go talk to her after class, which sometimes she would skip, so it made it a little bit harder. So I was going to do it on like this Friday or Thursday or whatever, and she wasn't in class that day, blah, blah, blah. So in comes, I think this is a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I think it was a Wednesday. So I go back to my room. We had some sort of assembly that day for all the incoming freshmen about like a drinking meeting or something, about why you shouldn't drink on campus or drinking responsibly, whatever. It was something along those lines, okay? And I go back to my room, walk back to my room by myself. I have 2 roommates at this point in time, by the way, which was not fun. One of them, they were both really, really cool. One was very obnoxious and ended up quitting school right after that, like a couple months later. We never really gelled all that well. But anyway, so this goes back to what I was saying when I first got back from that assembly. One of them was gone. The one that was like more of a partier, and he was a cool guy. He was probably the most team partier I've ever met. so which was cool that I was rooming with him and not one of the other guys that would come back drunk and puke all over the floor or something, which I'm sure has happened to people listening to this. But the other roommate was in my room sleeping. He was out of the equation. So I came back, threw on my pajamas, whatever I was wearing that day, like my Ryback shirt and shorts, and literally just threw on my slippers and started playing what else but SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 General Manager mode. So I'm playing the game and I'm going at it, having fun and whatever. And my other roommate, the one that wasn't sleeping, comes in, and he came in with some chick for the first time. And it's not like he was going to bone or anything. He wanted me to leave. Like, he just came in literally for 2 seconds to grab a water bottle or whatever it was. And I don't really pay too much attention to it. I'm still playing my game. And I don't ever really look over to see who it is because I know it's him, so I'm not stupid. And I don't really give a shit. So I'm playing my game. And then in the corner of my eye, I see that he's got a girl with him. And you know where this is going. It was the same girl that I didn't have the hots for, but that I was mildly interested in when I first started school. And at that point in time, was still interested in. I'm like, holy shit, what are the odds of this? That the same girl, of course, the only girl that I've met up to this point in college that I'm interested in, is of course either, I mean, he might have been friends with her, but it made it seem like they were seeing each other or they were doing something else. I don't know. And she seemed like a pretty nice girl, not like a partier or a drinker, and she obviously was, but not to a great extent. But anyway, I was heartbroken. I was like, fuck. I didn't say anything at that point in time. I played it cool. I went back to playing my game. But not only was he with this girl, that's not the point of the story. That's not the moral here. The moral here, the point that I'm trying to get at, is that I was literally sitting in my chair with my pajamas on, with my fucking slippers on, playing a wrestling video game, and I'm like, oh man, this is so embarrassing. As if it wasn't bad enough that he came in with this girl that I was interested in, that she was with him. Even worse, I was wearing slippers and playing some fucking wrestling video game, and then they left, and I was like, shit, and I was pissed for like 24 hours, and then I just learned to laugh it off. Like I said, you gotta learn to laugh at yourself. I'm like, this is so stupid, it's gonna make a great story, and I told a few people about it at that time, they laughed it off too. And it's, again, one of those things that I talked about here on the show before. You can't be ashamed or embarrassed by anything that you're interested in. I'm a huge wrestling fan, okay? I'm not going to hide that from anyone because I don't go out saying I'm a wrestling fan, but it's pretty obvious that I am based off the shirts I wear 95% of the time. And if you've ever met me or been in my room, my college dorm room, whatever, you know I'm a wrestling fan. I've got posters all over the place. It's pretty obvious. And that's happened before, too. I've had other people come into the room that weren't friends of mine, that were friends of my roommates and whatever. And they would question me about the posters, not like interrogate me like, why are you a wrestling fan? Like, no one literally ever did that. I did not meet a single person in college, which was amazing. Not even in high school, really. Very few people, if any at all, that I've ever met have ever questioned me about my fandom for wrestling. Because they just accept that's who I am. They don't really give a shit. They don't give a fuck, especially as you get older. People just don't care. And if they have any, concerns about it or qualms about it, or they do give a shit and they find it weird, they don't say anything. And that I don't care. If you just keep it to yourself, I don't really give a shit. You know what I mean? So at that specific moment when she came in, I was wearing the slippers. I'm like, oh man, this is so fucking embarrassing. And I kind of dropped it after that. I did talk to her on a few occasions after that. I got to know her for like a class period when we were paired together for an assignment that day, which was really cool. And I was so happy about that. But it didn't really go anywhere. We didn't really have any classes together the following semester. I think we maybe had one. She knew my name, but that was about it. And I moved on to other interests, so to speak, after that. And I think she ended up leaving the school because I think she actually switched majors. Unless she might have stayed at the school and switched majors now that I think about it, but there weren't many journalism majors after that point. At that point in time, but there were like later on or something like that. Other people switched into the major, and I think she might have switched that because I don't remember seeing her after like sophomore year, the beginning of sophomore year. I'm pretty sure she moved or something. She was also from the same state, which was another common interest, whatever. But what I'm trying to say is this: you can never be embarrassed or ashamed by anything that you're interested in or any specific instance like that. Shit's gonna happen that you can't expect. You can't write this shit. Like, some of this stuff is so ridiculous, and that's pretty tame, that's pretty mild compared to most embarrassing stories that I'm sure people can share. But that kind of stuff is gonna happen. You just have to own up to it. You gotta learn to laugh at yourself, and once you can learn to laugh at yourself, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? This stuff is so inconsequential, and you're going to forget. I mean, obviously I haven't forgotten about it, but because it was a funny experience, nothing that I'm, hanging my hat on, dreading, that I'm regretting or anything. And I might do a separate video about that, but you can't live with any regrets either. You can't regret anything because everything obviously happened for a reason, and everything happens for a reason. And the reason I say that is because everything happens for a reason, you learn from it, whether it's good or bad. And an experience like that, you learn. Now, otherwise, if that experience didn't happen, I wouldn't be here talking about it for this video here today. You take certain lessons out of certain situations, and you turn every negative into a positive. That might have been a negative at the time, at least for a day or so, that I was upset that it happened. Not only that I was embarrassed, but because he was with this girl that I was seemingly interested in at that time 4 years ago. But you gotta take certain positives out of every negative. And there's always at least one positive in every negative situation, which you need to keep in mind in order to survive on this earth. If you dwell on the negative, you're going to be a negative person. It's like 1 + 1 = 2. It's obvious. It's academic. It's just natural. So don't do that. Take all the positives out of every negative, and especially in situations like that where you feel embarrassed. Embarrassment is a natural emotion. It's going to happen. But you need to learn that it doesn't really matter. Don't hang your hat on it. Don't get upset over it. Don't let it ruin your day. Learn to live about it. Learn to laugh about it, Live on, and life moves on. It doesn't even matter. People forget about it in 2 seconds. You might remember it. You feel like everyone's going to remember it because it happened to you. But beyond you, beyond the person that it happened to, they'll forget about it, and they'll forget about it in 10 seconds. There's so much stuff going on in this earth that little stuff like that will be forgotten about so quickly. So you should forget about it too. So never be embarrassed. Of course, you're going to feel embarrassed, but quickly remind yourself, hey, who cares? Who gives a shit? And I've said it before. The only opinion of yourself that matters, I said this in the first or second video I ever did of Injection of Inspiration. The only opinion of you that matters is the one that you have of yourself. Other people's opinions don't matter to you. Of you, anyway. Other people's opinions do matter, but you know what I'm trying to say. Never put too much stock in one person's opinion. So keep that in mind going forward. We all have those certain situations, especially in high school, sometimes in college, not really in our adult life, but it happens. You'll feel stupid when you do this. I'm like, oh, I look like such an idiot in public. It's like, dude, when you're in public, especially in an area where you don't know too many people, you'll never even see that person again. Who gives a fuck? You know what I'm saying? You'll never see that person again. They probably have no idea who the hell you are or give a shit who you are. So the fact that you screwed up in front of them, those are the best times to screw up. Because you'll never see those people again. You know what I'm saying? So, again, that's my life lesson to you for today's installment of Injection of Inspiration. I thank you for checking out the video. As always, we'll be back next Saturday with another all-new episode of the show. In the meantime, and in between time, you guys can follow me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for daily content. Like I said, guys, new episode next Saturday. But until then, have a great weekend, and I'll catch your ass down the road.